All right, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. This is going to be part 2 of the Sunstreak draft briefing, and this is going to be reading 2. And then for this one, I've just opened up the Crest library just to, I think in the last video I mentioned the Gale committee. Not realizing that there was a committee opened, and of course there's the report. And just want to show you. So again, it's program Stargate or collection Stargate. A lot of this stuff falls under that. So this breakdown for the committee actually is written down more succinctly, and there's actually different versions of it. There's even one with more of a slide presentation format. Just feel free to pause this. Looks like a routing slip. It's interesting how even the routing slips are classified. Let's look at the first one here, 1980. I'm not sure how the Gale Committee report was done. I mean, it's 6 years difference from when this this annual report was done to when the Gale Committee. Yeah, so Gale Committee report. Individuals involved are sincere, dedicated, non-sympathetic management impeded activity. No evidence of fraud, deception. Topic generates substantial inhibitions. Statistical analysis not as important as protocol. No meaningful theoretical explanation exists. Critiques: early work had improper documentation control. Current work is fragmented, has low budget. Management is ambivalent, lacks focus. I mean, this is the committee report is almost like an audit as well, what you might call an audit. So you can just scroll through that, and that's actually there is a better report here under this NSA Archive 2, which is an independent site, I think. I don't know that that's actually associated with the NSA. I didn't look when I screen captured it. But if you want to take a look at this document, simply just enter in this URL up here, or just go to this CIA RDP 9600 and type that in, and you'll get a nice overview of what's going on here, what's being read. Okay, so the previous video we ended at current activities line here, and for this specific reading, there's a lot of pages that are just isolated with like a few sentences. So this was almost like a slide presentation, and I will read through all of that, just hopefully being able to provide context. And I think the broken down version like this too will give people data points, at least just mentally, to make clear distinctions between the program intelligence, the way it's labeled and identified, and the thinking behind all of this. Overall, it's kind of bird's eye. So let me just start off with where we left off previously. Today, Project Sunstreak conducts operations from its location at Fort Meade, Maryland. This small 12-man unit conducts several training programs designed to develop source abilities to address intelligence targets. The unit also conducts a utility assessment program for trained remote viewing sources. This assessment program provides the source with a variety of intelligence problems drawn from intelligence files. The purpose of this assessment is twofold. First, it provides a database of what types of intelligence problems can be addressed using remote viewing, and second, it measures individual source abilities with respect to various types of intelligence missions. The unit also conducts intelligence collection operations in response to valid collection requirements. As stated earlier, this process consists of developing a collection plan, conducting remote viewing sessions, reporting results for the collection effort, and evaluating the value of the results. So we get a little brief definition of psychoenergetics, psychokinesis, and ESP, telepathy, and remote viewing. So psychoenergetics, the process by which an individual may physically interact with objects, locations, organisms, or events. Psychokinesis, physical actions performed by mental powers that cannot be explained by known physical means. ESP, telepathy, remote viewing, perceptions which cannot be explained by known sensory means. So I wouldn't say these are really definitions, but they're, I guess, abbreviated understandings. We'll just call it that for now. Remote viewing, the acquisition and description by mental means of information blocked from ordinary perception by distance, shielding, or time. Early development. Now again, these dates are only relative to this program and the research that was available to the people compiling this report. Even though it does involve people from SRI, it's most likely that, like I said, most of the in the previous video, most of the research was often removed, compartmentalized, and either brought to another group to begin research or just not dealt with at all ever again. So here we have 1972, U.S. Army Surgeon General Medical Intelligence Information Agency. And that's actually referenced, that's its new name, the Medical Intelligence Information Agency. Which I believe might have been the precursor to the CDC, but this name is new within this document. It was previously called something else, and I'm not sure offhand there. 1976, Missile Intelligence Agency, Army Material Systems Analysis Agency. 1977, Intelligence and Security Command, INSCOM. So these were different aspects, most likely, of the DIA or DOD that were working in early development. 1977, INSCOM Gondola Wish. The purpose: to integrate the Soviet and Eastern psychoenergetic intelligence collection threat into the all-source operations OPSEC support scenario. Location: Fort Meade. 1978, INSCOM Grill Flame. Purpose: use remote viewing as a collection method. 1979 was the first operational remote viewing session. Location: Fort Meade. Now, they're using specific language here, the first operational session, but it doesn't mean it was the first session. 1979, Gale Committee findings. Well, that explains the date that we see on the report here. Continue operational activities to determine the value of remote viewing for intelligence collection. Follow psychoenergetic threat from foreign sources. Establish a central DOD authority to fund and monitor a psychoenergetic program. DOD, of course, being Department of Defense. So there's confirmation there. 1980, Perry Memorandum. This was later, I think, actually it says it right there. Terminated R&D funding, P6 for psychoenergetic activities. Allowed continuance of intelligence application efforts. The funding was halted for a brief time, and then another group brought it back, I believe, as a result of the Gale Committee report. 1981, Grill Flame, a 3-year program to determine the operational parameters and usefulness of psychoenergetics. Assess the threat the phenomena posed to national security. The roles: Defense Intelligence Agency, that's the DIA. Their role was threat, here we go, countermeasures, use established psychics, primarily through SRI contracts. And then U.S. Army, INSCOM, apply remote viewing, use assigned personnel, contract to enhance the capability. And this is a nice list here. So the Grill Flame players. And this should, I mean, the Secret Service was new to me. I hadn't even really thought about that. And that's the second to the last one. But Grill Flame players may not necessarily mean those involved in the sessions. It just may be people who are observing and receiving the research itself, but it's hard to say until you really pour through all of these documents. Secretary of Army, Army General Counsel, Assistant Surgeon General for Medical R&D, Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, the NSA, the CIA, the Navy, the Secret Service, and the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence Staff. Senate Select Intelligence. I haven't. The word staff at the end may change or redesignate. Who, I don't know if that means that the staff of the committee were doing it, or the staff of the committee were going to be taught it, or it's only the staff that was receiving it. 1982, Budget Subcommittee of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Curtailed INSCOM use of NFIP funding for psychoenergetic activities. Allowed DIA to complete the third year of the research. So as I was stumbling through the name or the abbreviation, NFIP were the ones who were responsible for allowing the funding to continue or to reestablish the funding. Okay, so Center Lane, a new name. 1982, INSCOM, Center Lane. These are all different program names. Funding provided with security and investigative activities. S&IA monies. Perry Memorandum reversed in January 1983. So it was the NFIP and the Gill Committee report that reversed the Perry Memorandum. It's I guess a memorandum from Perry is enough to terminate an entire project. Key recommendations. Basic research in both remote viewing and remote action phenomena should be initiated. Applied intelligence applications research in remote viewing should be continued and should be under the overall management of DIA. 1984, 1985, 1986. MOA between DIA and INSCOM, transfer of Center Lane to DIA, and NFIP funding is restored. And that's 1986. And then we have Sunstreak. Sunstreak mission, undertake operational intelligence applications using an aspect of psychoenergetics known as remote viewing. Let me pause that. So the whole notion of remote viewing here, like they said, was just to, I guess, find missile silos in Russian territory or wherever they may be hidden in the Eastern Bloc at that time, or whatever the terms were that they used to reference Russia. But I may be doing a disservice to these documents by saying this, but that would only be able to occur if you have some sort of astral projection ability. So if you believe in astral projection, or you have participated in any form of it yourself through your own means and effort, remote viewing is fundamentally, I think, correlated, if not the same thing. However, I could also say that it's, sitting in your chair and seeing something from a distance in your mind while conscious could be perceived as more like thought travel, which is, it doesn't have to be, it could be argued, if I really got into it, that it's not astral projection, but I'm just trying to correlate some contemporary terms or New Age terms with what they were doing, so you might have a recognition of this, at least on a basic level. Benefits of remote viewing. It is passive, it is inexpensive, no known defense. Although if we remember a couple pages up, the DIA was responsible for countermeasures. Categories of tasking. Penetration of inaccessible targets. Science and technology information. Queuing of other intelligence collection systems. Imminent hostilities, determination of nuclear from non-nuclear targets, human source assessments, accurate personality profiles. I don't know what the last two reference definitively. I mean, if you want to know what imminent hostilities are, I could say that's also future forecasting as well. Queuing other intelligence collection systems might be figuring out how to piggyback onto another existing process, and penetration of inaccessible targets might mean that on the ground, person-to-person level, it's impossible to get in, but we should be able to use RV to do that. That might be what that reference is. Training. Practical exercises, lectures, literature review, observation of others. Extended remote viewing, ERV in parentheses, a system whereby the remote viewing channels are opened through deep relaxation and focused concentration. Coordinated remote viewing. Remote viewers adhere to a very rigid structure of progresses through a series of stages, 1 through 6, postulated to correspond to increased contact with a designated site. So coordinated remote viewing might sound like it's a group and you're doing it with people, but what it actually means is that they're going to give you longitude and latitude coordinates, and you will, which I honestly don't know how that works. That seems, for me, a longitude and latitude coordinate would not mean anything to me unless the Army people that are trained are memorizing maps, and they're trained to memorize the map so that they know what one quadrant of coordinates generally means. But I still, because there's research that says looking at plain text specifically for most people is almost difficult. It's almost like they say a dyslexic reaction to trying to read specific numbers through an RV session. It's hard for me to see how that's a gateway into it, but there may be research that I haven't gotten to yet. The collection plan. EEI and indicators are listed. Target time windows are listed. Selection of remote viewing techniques. Selection of remote viewers. So the time windows is, I think, an evolution or an aspect of progress made whereby determining the comfort of the remote viewer was based on time intervals. However, I think anybody who's further in the rabbit hole, so to speak, with ancient texts and astronomy and astrotheology, it's most likely related to the cycles of the planets and the sun and the moon, whereby those positions also determined the ability and qualitative nature of each session. I don't know if that's referenced in here. I actually haven't come across that. However, I don't think I should ignore all of the existing literature prior to what the CIA and NSA and Navy and all these people have done that stipulates that this is possible. Astral projection works better at different times through different lights, literally of the spectrum. Remote viewing session. Team effort. ERV, it's the interviewer who controls, directs, and elicits information, and then a remote viewer who does the reporting. CRV, a monitor, controls and supervises structure, and a remote viewer who reports. So the interviewer controls, directs. So that may be someone who has this is when they're specifically tasked with a known area to penetrate, and the interviewer may, or maybe even the monitor as well, may have enough information where if the remote viewer is giving abstract responses, but the interviewer or remote viewer, monitor, is familiar enough with the data that they have that they can help keep them from wandering off, I suspect, or at least help them refine whatever little bit they're able to gather or see or experience while there. It's more of a guidepost, I think. Oh, I'm a little too far there. So you can see there's a lot of new information coming in. So current activities, training, basic extended remote viewing ERV, basic coordinated remote viewing CRV, abstract reference discrimination of binary alternatives, object remote viewing, advanced individual training, utility assessment program, intelligence collection operations. So these are the existing activities that are already taking place as a result of Center Lane, Grill Flame, Sunstreak, the Gateway Program, Gondola Wish, and Stargate. So let's look at this. The fourth quarter charts. The following charts reflect the distribution of the 91 remote viewing training sessions conducted during the fourth quarter of 1986. Training precess for CRV, ERV, and RDBA can be found in appendices 1 through 3 respectively. So it's 38 total sessions, 18 using numbers. It's not really valuable to look at this, but you can pause the screen. So now we're going to get into some more content, and this is the fourth quarter training highlights. And we'll go into ERV trainees completed the beaconing phase of training during October. Training sites are currently selected from global training site files. It is anticipated that source number 079 will become operational sometime during the first quarter of 1987. So number 079 is how they reference an RV or a talent or a potential. And you'll see that anybody with a hash in front of their name, in front of 3 digits, you'll see that any numbers with a hash in front of it is actually referencing someone. And this, the beaconing, I'm not 100% clear on what that means, but I think it has to do with someone being at a specific target and then the RVer being able to use that someone to figure out where they are. It's like following a brainwave of someone else. CRV source 011 completed stage 2 on 10 October and stage 3 on 5 December. This source also is expected to become operational during the first quarter of 1987. Source 003 received 1.5 years of CRV training and has had 2 years of operational experience. Source was the primary author compiler of the CRV training document used by this office. Source 011 was previously assigned to this office and employed as an operational ERV source and interviewer. Source is now being trained in the CRV technique and has completed through stage 3. Source 018 received 1 year of CRV training. After working operationally, 6 months of cross-training in the RV technique was provided. Source is now dual qualified and can contribute to the operational effort in either ERV or CRV mode. Source 021 received 1.5 years of CRV training and has had 2 years of operational experience. This source has displayed some ERV talent and is being utilized with greater frequency in that technique. Source was co-author compiler of the CRV training document. Source 079 has received 8 months of ERV training and is looking forward to the challenge of operational activities. Source prepared the draft briefing found in Enclosure 4 of the Sunstreak Annual Activities Report for 1986. Source 101 received 1.5 years of CRV training and has had 2 years of operational experience. Source also received 6 months of ERV training. Experienced in both CRV and ERV, 101 is utilized in the ERV technique for all operations and advanced training sessions. Training techniques, U. This U in parentheses here is on almost every Stargate document near a title head or something like that, as well as the what's called the DAMish or Damish, DAM in capital letters, -ISH in capital letters. I haven't really deciphered what that means, but you can also use the CIA library for searching through that level. And get a large amount of documents related to so grill flame, access to grill flame, center lane activity, and I don't know if these other ones, like further criticism of inadequate use of machinery, so that looks like it's a meta related issue. But then we got Damish right here, center lens. So there's various ways, and here's the U again. There's various ways to examine this stuff. Log, let's look while we're here. Let's see. So that is a Stargate collection one. This looks like a session. So this was another way of taking a session. Target material in the first column here. Knowledge provided to interviewer for session. Feedback to source following session. So feedback to source, again, that's they figured out that it was important to let them know that they're either succeeding or not succeeding. I don't know if it means always being positive about it, but the RVer needs feedback to continue to hone their ability and sort of self-correct on their own. Key results provided by the source. Oh, that's good. That's a lot. Looks like a lot. Yeah, these are various. A lot of stuff blocked out, redacted here. Okay, so let's get back to reading. Training techniques. Abstract reference discrimination of binary alternatives was incorporated into the training program during the fourth quarter of 1987 with two desired objectives in mind. 1. Identify potential trainee sources who possess innate ability to discriminate between different alphanumerics historically. One of the most difficult psychic tasks, like I just said, numbers, there's a dyslexic aspect of it, I guess, using their word. And 2, determine the feasibility of training this ability. The precise for RDBA training is attached in Appendix 3. Object remote viewing, ORV, training was incorporated into the training program during the third quarter of 1986. The prime objective of ORV training is to train a source to provide greater details about specific objects, e.g., components, assemblies, etc., the description of which may be of intelligence value. Detailed descriptions of discrete objects are not emphasized during normal RV training or operational sessions. As a result, trained sources experience some difficulty perceiving object detail when required, ergo, the rationale behind ORV training. The preface, I don't know if that's preface, for ORV training is attached as Appendix 4. And then we have advanced individual training continues to be utilized to some degree within the training program. A preface for the training technique is included as Appendix 5. Training officer is redacted. So then we have training preface for extended remote viewing. The extended remote viewing training procedure draws on the expertise of over 2 decades of research by independent investigators in recognized academic institutions, including the University of Virginia Medical Center, the Maimonides Medical Center, the Mind Science Foundation, the University of California at Davis, Texas Southern University of Houston, Mundelein College, Syracuse University, and others. The ERV approach has as its goal the subjective temporal extension of subliminally brief psychic impressions. The trained ERV percipient is able to control, observe, and report perceptions which would otherwise be ignored or neglected fleeting images. This extension of the perceptual window is accomplished through the achievement of a discrete state of consciousness defined by identified state-dependent behaviors. So let's read that one more time. This extension of the perceptual window is accomplished through the achievement of a discrete state of consciousness defined by identified state-dependent behaviors. I think to just break that down in my own language, I would say that it's ritual and performance dependent, meaning the person would enter a state randomly through a specific mechanism not being recorded, and whatever appeared in their head would be the session and then sort of scrutinized based on that. These behaviors are regarded as skills which the trainee must master. The basic components of the ERV training procedure involve the trainee in learning the following skills. A little bit of meat and potatoes here. Skill 1, ability to physically relax. Training in progressive relaxation techniques, biofeedback, yoga, etc. Skill 2, ability to reduce level of physical arousal. That's a pretty big deal for a lot of people. Training in biofeedback techniques, self-control exercises, autogenic training. Skill 3, ability to attenuate sensory inputs. Training in sensory isolation, concentration exercises, and centering devices. Now that doesn't mean your phone. It's nomenclature for like things that you have that you do to center yourself. Skill 4, ability to increase awareness of internal feelings and images. Training in dream recall, guided visual imagery exercises, subliminal recognition drills, hemispheric synchronization, etc. 5, ability to engage, receptive mode, right hemispheric functioning, hemispheric synchronization training, biofeedback, mode recognition, drawing classes, etc. Skill 6, ability to achieve an altered view of reality, reading assignments, intellectual study, meditation and contemplation exercises. So skill 1 through skill 6, it's almost like let me just, before I say my statement, it is really like the language arts and the body arts, the arts of the rhetoric, the arts of mnemonic arts, arts of memory, arts of recall, yoga, like they say. These are repackaged, not to discredit, to belittle what the authors have done and the researchers have done, but it's almost like we're taking the sacred arts, some of them tied to sacred geometry, being able to use mnemonics, which is the art of memory, also the art of rhetoric, the ability to become physically connected to your environment, relax around random people, or just find relaxation in what might otherwise be a stressful situation, and still maintain a connection between mitigating that stress and walking through your mental gateway to get where you need to go. It's, to me, these are things that I was able to do better when I was 10 years old, because I absolutely had no care in the world. As easily as I would draw a picture of, Superman or Spider-Man without any hesitation, or write a small story about something without any, without stopping to worry about how I wrote it, whether or not it was grammatically correct. You kind of have to unlearn a lot of things and spend time doing it, because these types of things are isolation mechanisms. These are, I understand that there might potentially be group sessions and people might be doing group yoga and group meditation. However, that to me, in my experience, even just being in different apartment buildings growing up, you get seepage from other people. Like, you literally get seepage from other people. So this number 2, ability to reduce level of physical arousal, training in biofeedback techniques, self-control exercises, autogenic training. I've been around people who recognize, if you can recognize when you're physically attracted to someone, or, you have inadvertently been the person staring at someone who's attractive and not knowing it until it was too late. That's just an example of it. But this seepage of dreams and memories can occur where other people are so excited and they're transmitting so loudly, either through their biology, like their body language is transmitting something that you recognize, or their their biofeedback is very strong and the waves are hitting you hard. It's hard to sort through all that stuff. And I think for a lot of people, it's interpreted as nightmares, or it's interpreted as chaos, or some people, might even say they're just hearing voices or whatever. But that's one aspect, I think, a negative side of it, with this ability to increase awareness over internal feelings and images. That's huge. Not saying I've conquered any of this stuff. It's just I have, at one time or another, found myself down this river, conceptually speaking, without a paddle, and my boat's tipped over often while I was going down the stream. So seeing this and having it on screen is a good reference, but also having my own experiences that I can self-referentially tap into to help validate the chaos from the order helps. It doesn't qualify anything I'm saying. It doesn't refute anything I'm saying. Whether or not you were skeptical or not, that's fine. For me, I recognize what's being said here as it relates to my own experiences. And just to go a little bit further back in some of the other videos I mentioned, prayer, to me, I think is a big example, a prime example of meditation, where you're not going through the labors, so to speak. If we were to say the 12 labors, if you're not going through the labors here of the physical body, where you're becoming fit somehow. You're using the ritual and performance of your body to, as I said here, I think I forget which one we were at here, but going through a ritual and process to where you're starting to get, there we go, this one, fleeting images, sort of, if you're a mechanic who's working on something, or you're a typist who's typing, or you're a driver who's driving, doing not a mundane task, but a task that you're so used to doing, you can afford to let your mind wander just a little bit. And that's that zone, that is that gateway sometimes, where I said if you run 10 miles, or I ran 10 miles and I disappeared for the first, the last 7 of them. Or perhaps you're someone who drives on the highway a lot, and I recall having this conversation with people before, but sometimes you'll drive and you don't recognize how you got through it all. From point A to point B, it's a drive you've been doing for 10 years, 1 year, 20 years, whatever, including traffic. You just kind of disappear for a little bit and go into a meditative state, and you arrive alive somehow. That is part of what I'm saying, is that everybody, I think, taps into it one time or another. Now, if you're a surgeon and you start let's say, negatively, what we might call tripping out in the middle of your procedure, that's going to be an issue. But that's probably also why certain people have certain jobs, and we've all gravitated towards certain types of jobs in our life, and things that we feel comfortable doing. And even, like I said in another video, cooking, cleaning, running, there's all kinds of ways to enter into a meditative state outside of these. However, I think if you're going to be, for the lack of a better term, if you're going to be militant about this and you really want to learn it, or you really want to understand what's happening to yourself through these, I would recommend just going through this literature more thoroughly, and meditating on what's being written here by people who have done a lot of research on their own. So 8, there's 8 of them. So number 7, ability, desire to focus intent, conscious and unconscious, on remote viewing. Well, there you go. Training in organizational management, counseling, personal reinforcement, motivation. Number 8, the final one, ability to communicate RV perceptions, training in right hemispheric verbalization techniques, sketching. So sketching techniques, practice in non-analytical reporting, etc. So as I said before I began that rant, it's almost like you're learning the sacred arts. You have to go through the sacred arts. Each one of these skills is trained over a period of several weeks. When the trainee demonstrates independent mastery of each skill, he learns to combine skills. His goal is to simultaneously exhibit all of the learned skills, thereby achieving a specified discrete state of consciousness in which the trainee is able to RV. The behavioral psychologist would call this state-dependent repertoire of behaviors a sub-personality. Label it as remote viewer and include it along with other sub-personalities, parent, spouse, athlete, office, supervisor, etc., in the individual's overall identity. From this perspective, the trained ERVer is able to RV by simply internally identifying with the remote viewer as easily as one becomes a parent, spouse, or athlete. This feat is accomplished by willfully identifying with a role, a learned set of state-dependent behaviors, and an appropriate, socially accepted environment. Once the trainee is able to become a remote viewer by engaging learned skills, he/she is challenged to perform under controlled conditions. This is done by presenting the trainee with progressively complex RV tasks, coupled with a reinforcement strategy designed to develop self-confidence and to internalize ego state stabilizing factors. Assessment of individual RV capabilities can begin during this phase for training. For just as there are parents, spouses, athletes, and teachers with different abilities, so too are there remote viewers possessing a wide range of abilities. The general target or site categories for these progressively complex RV tasks are outlined below. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and let me just go back to the paragraph. We're going to close this off at this here. Each one of these skills is so I found this one sentence a little difficult here. The behavioral psychologist would call this state-dependent repertoire of behaviors a sub-personality. When the trainee demonstrates independent mastery of each skill, he then learns to combine the skills. His goal is to simultaneously exhibit all of the learned skills, thereby achieving a specified discrete state of consciousness in which the trainee is able to RV. I don't know how we jump to that sentence. I'm not sure how that makes sense to me. Label it as remote viewer and include it. It's almost like with other sub-personalities, I guess you might be, your job is to either visualize yourself being that way. From this perspective, the trained ERVer is able to RV by simply internally identifying with the remote viewer as easily as one be. Okay, so I see. You essentially convince yourself you can do it. You prove it to yourself. You create a persona for yourself to get into as a totem or a mechanism or a wayfinding device for yourself. You know, if I guess one way to look at it is if you want to check out what the waves are like at the ocean and you want to go surfing that day and you don't want to check it out and you just want to visualize it. And a good test for you is to, if you are a surfer, is to just put yourself there, a spot where you've been before, and pretend, you know, maybe try to visualize what you think it's going to be and then go check it out. You know, go test it out. Another way is, like I said, the totem or the wayfinding device, which is that you just create a sub-personality for yourself where you are a teacher, and maybe that's how you enter into it, and you teach yourself to always go through with, you know, whatever mental devices, mnemonics that you teach yourself. And that's interesting. So I'm going to end this here, and this is going to be Sunstreak draft brief, reading session number 2. And let's just mark this so I know where to kick it off on the next video. Local targets and feel free again to go through this library here. I've actually had people tell me that they're not going to go to the CIA's website because they don't want to be tracked. And I mean, if you're logged into YouTube right now, or you're finding this on any website, or you've ever done a search on a search engine, you've been tracked. If you've made a phone call, you've been tracked. If you've text messages, you've been tracked. If you've rented a book from the library, you were tracked. If you rented a DVD from Blockbuster or watched a video on Netflix, you were tracked. It's an absurd paranoid fear to have in the first place. And I'm reading this and then submitting these on a public forum and then submitting them out to another platform. Are these platforms monitored? They sure are. Does it keep you from being able to learn it? No. You may not be able to share it just yet, but it does not keep you from learning any of this stuff. So I don't see what the problem is with going to a Freedom of Information Act electronic reading room located on the Central Intelligence Agency's website. If you want to call it a PSYOP, that's up to you. If you want to avoid learning anything outside of your own perspective, that is up to you. But I think there's some profound material on here worth sharing, both from the NSA, the CIA, the DIA, the FBI, whatever. There's a ton of stuff on here for really any interested individual. It's as qualified, if not more qualified, than going to MIT's website and looking at their open library and open education courses. And there's a lot of information to be gleaned from here if you're interested in any number of things. So, all right, have a good day, or good night, or good morning.